Hello, this is in response to they have experts on law. So, for example, Judge Napolitano speaking for about the Racketeering Influenced and Corrupt Organization Act and the uses of it against Trump. All sides in criminal and civil cases and victims advocates with the news at the same time, which is simple. That's just a list of names that is extensive. They have been stacking predicate acts with facts roles. As we know, black pupils, whites of eyes, how we have the same color eyes and different color eyes at the same time. Nature communicates other than we were supposed to. That's one of the things simultaneously that we're supposed to communicate simultaneously with how the breaching method implied assign natural difference to mean other and or to for the identities of people speaking for the law and or for the nature of the law and or for names, because every name is an identity of law /s. But see, now we are names individually group differences and humanity voicings that have only been remembered, tactical ulterior from what nature demonstrates us to voice to from as with and for this at the same time. It is coming to from as with and for itself, the identity of the hyper simultaneous. This which has the species bodies distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously with traits shared that they can't share, but per how we do anyway. Two eyes, male, female, as some of the differences, locations, areas. See, this breaching method put all these roles with itself to measure and maintain itself left out, where nature demonstrates a breaching method. Correlation nature demonstrates a breaching method was present, consciously using how sick those laws were against every single person, sickly distinctly. George Washington told us to address the extortion of him and the torture of him with communications which are greater than and more finite than what is said. Also, our founders communicated for us to understand where and how what they said was used to measure and maintain by the breaching method. So they did not have free speech. This is why we were told to explicitly to get, in other words, we were communicated to deal with the extortion of George Washington, honestly. So this is what came to the mail only from the first time of 3 times. People from Hartford Hospital faked conversations with me, as collusions with a whole bunch of people tied to Dylan family members, and with houses next to me, where they've been planting evidences with the intelligence community on all sides of people's houses, were used remotely as evidences are the branches of government originally and still. For example, it is manifest when they make opinions about what witch trials are about. They also have delusions that are there, and then they have sense and sensibilities and pretend it's personal when they have delusions. I'm not even a doctor. Nature shows us. A predicate, I'm not even a lawyer, too. A predicate act shows us a criminal insidiousness nature. And now we know that predicate acts with facts are one of the things that uses of communications other than what black and white is about by nature is a predicate acts with facts roles. If someone wants to debate that inherently, actively, and progressively to their fact-achieving nature are going to be demonstrations of it. And their motivations, narratives. And we're with descriptions of emotions. See, nature uses if any person, or even if a whole bunch of people together, if their descriptions of anything, finite, grouped, or together, if it is to hide or to make up a finite detail, and in other words, there are means to discern. In other words, if the descriptions of emotions are to make something up, there are means to discern this. But increasingly, While this is becoming more discernible, it is simultaneously becoming other ways less discernible too, because of how the identity of the simultaneous is valuable to reason. There is also a hyper simultaneous there, as we can also discern. So again, a predicate act is involved with a criminal insidiousness nature. See, but nature itself demonstrates negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. If anyone were to entertain any of the laws, let alone them all together and grouped as they were designed as colonization's laws, and uses manifest of where and how branches of government are actually manifest. Every identity of volume as one singular identity, it can as value where it is also positive unto itself as nature automatically temporary. No. And that stays because the identity of relationship to itself, that is also with Earth's a special difference. And note how the rest of the species body don't have criminal foreign influences and or, through ourselves, but they have no choice. See, nature, before there were criminally foreign influence sciences, it was revealed to the ancients how to cause positive value nature progressions, acts in nature that are everywhere at once, and or to discern if what is conceived, including conceptually, if that's criminal insidiousness nature, they would adapt and value that, because that shows you how to make positives. That's not. It's another way. One way it will only stay positive unto itself when we can tap into this. I shouldn't have to give away my intellectual property rights, but the agencies have roles with criminally foreign influence readings of statutes, and with how they get away with it simultaneously, and with how the breaching method is there simultaneously. And it is to affect how any subject treatment as an identity of volume, where volume is value as nature. These are being used to measure and maintain collusion with database-oriented predicate acts delivery system method that is exploited at other roles, that is exploited at other locations that had already been roles, and where manifest, like where people make the value of money, including with the interbranch and the foreign at the same time. Correlation nature uses where and how they employ negatives. They employed everyone force roles. Native Americans to fight with Native Americans. Why? Individually grouped, because now they're prevented free speech by a breaching method that was sensing and discerning. If anyone would have a quality of fact treatment nature, that's going to use what is actually simultaneously recorded, actually the proper details, treatments, or actually properly honest where and how, why that's left out. Because obviously you can't have quality of fact treatment nature if your role is speaking for the law, while the law still rolls with breaching method in play, tortures and extortion, and slavery. But we're having to debate that because we haven't addressed the extortion of George Washington, because we have other told and pretended evidence. So the intelligence community, the identity of experts on logic, they have been fabricating conversations with people about American history because they have criminally foreign influence readings of statutes and of evidence that are also tactically delusions raw / hyper tactically, because countries grouped also sell value roles with this. Mental health diagnosis and methods of pretending, truths used for lies and totally made up conversations. So when there's exceptions, they value that too. And it comes when we are very young. It starts where they have methods by this. The military has, they have the motivations planted for them by the breaching method. This was a hyper sophistication here since before our founders were born. The suburbs were designed in the north and in the south. And the difference is, to cause negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, as an identity of the ground's identity of relationship to itself, per its definition of it. And again, nature itself will demonstrate negative value nature progressions, acts, and nature, and those how it was sickly, so sickly, distinctly against everyone. Nature will only stay positive unto itself, so it shows how that's positive means to discern. How nature can answer our questions. So the Racketeering, Influence, and Corrupt Organization Act, there's a former director of the FBI, a former standing chairperson on the Racketeering, Influenced, and Corrupt Organizations Act, who has collusions with readings of it that can't be defended, and us from what exploits that, which are also worse than war crimes roles with military police, with their identities as KKK themed, Confederate flag themed, and black themed, where and how black has been and is just like white, which is the color of our eyes, no, not the skin. We're going to stay on what is not debatable anyway. See, they pretend they're quality fact cheap in nature. In other words, all that they're doing is forcing an equality of fact cheap in nature. And the difference in the opinions only formally allowed to be heard A through Z, or that person is sensed. And if they don't, they have roles with this. Otherwise, they self-value fake things having been attached into the databases. Every campus I went to has connections between people with little predicate acts with facts, tricks, roles into databases, not just against me, but against everyone. How I caught this was staying aware of uses that were also singularly used with insidious behavior of people I didn't have classes with in my grammar school, for example. One of them. I went through them from grade 1 to grade 6. And they made me stay back. I started school young, though, the first year. And they spied on me the first year. I love all my teachers, even the ones that didn't deserve it, like a Mr. Abruzzi and a Mr. Neville. And we're in the woods. Forgiveness is important because where we have people like them involved with body dumping spots, names, and investigators that were used remotely, not with the killings. I don't know if they ever done, even if it was made up. They have rules of predicate acts with facts with the criminal bodies involved. See, when they make treatments, oh, this is about the mob, they're saying Italian groups. See, they have employed where they measure and maintain the group. They have a little bit of police forms, like with a DeMauro family. There's DeMauro family involved with Rocky Hill, Hartford, and Wethersfield, names next to campuses, on off them, and with news, involved with foreign and domestic medical and military, and news at the same time with crime scenes, with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, planting fake motivations for everything good and bad, because criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments and negative treatments are simultaneously involved, where and how there is identity theft, fraud, slanders in our face, overtly / insidiously against our founders who had to counter extort the other founders, who are also already extorted, tortured, and enslaved by the breaching of, but it also employed that as self-value roles, where and how positive and negative treatments, and again, names treatments, are being and have been used. And we are simultaneously valued as the earth. So when we are 5 identities of sequence nature as identities to be voiced, we are juxtaposed. Additionally, as 15, because we are also grouped with the other species bodies as distinct identities of simultaneous nature. Being an individual body of an individual species body. Group differences are in demonstration of this, coming also with a being value a species as a simultaneous nature / sequence nature. They are both the identity of the simultaneous, where and how it is hyper-additional to itself. They appear to be. One is about the simultaneous, but the other is not. This is why and how its important nature is communicating simultaneously with where and how we must be led by the hyper-invisible but still discernible. Otherwise, it demonstrates negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, including how as criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments. The breaching method employed negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures to simultaneously have through our own, everywhere the species body stands, have other things others ourselves blamed. For example, where and how it employed self-values without anyone realizing semi-ancient countries, names of countries, as collusions with remotely used locations, areas, and states, criminally foreign influence, fact, treatment, nature, quality, aspects, and nature as criminal insidiousness, nature. So predicate acts roles, and with them self-value too. See, that's where and how it uses when they make treatments regarding money's value. They're used to measure and maintain. They can't defend themselves. The stewards of our modern nations, the suits and ties, the counters to them, and the exceptions. This is also relative to where and to how they have recorded motivations, how they could even be motivated to pretend other against what hurts them themselves remotely. We have to understand this. We have to examine what's actually hyper-evidentially recorded. So they may try to make fake exceptions to make it look like me. I had conversations with Ray Reynolds that never were interstates, with Rhode Island State Police, involved with Mike Roberts and Eric Jensen, also with Connecticut State Police. I mean, with Vermont State Police, also involved with them too, though. I don't know about, I know only through what he repeated, that they repeated for me about Ray Reynolds, his roles with Rhode Island, with Block Island, and with the intelligence community, with Central Connecticut State University, names like a Mike Pandolf. They're planting fake motives when they're these are people involved with my kindergarten class that I went to 1 year, one school, it closed then. These are people that connected, they have the names next to campuses involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, which is one of the things that is distinctly against each person. But each person has self-valued roles where you are identities of logic and where you defend that. You can't defend that and afford the quality of fact-treating nature that is capable of being discerned relative to uses of this consciously, where and how. Actually, in other words, consciously, there are recorded means to observe the natural differences, like black, and like people that say they're white, different ways, and how they use family members. They have the kids and the adults of all natural differences roles. Sought me out. Time where I'm going to be for little tricks roles. Where and how that is relative. The hyper-evidential shows that there have been collusions with the court's names and with the police forms' names and with the lawyers on both sides in criminal and civil cases, and with victims and with their victims' advocates with predicate acts methods that show criminal insidiousness, how it is used by the natures of positive treatments, negative treatments, and name treatments, how it is used by the breaching method that also uses remotely the self-valued, self-defended logic of the countries grouped, how grouped and why. Oh, but these logistical reasons, this and this could pop up and this and this. The reason they had all that time, nuclear weapons pointed at each other. All that time, they were suits and ties, pretending they could speak for the law. Certain type of victim / hyper victim, relative to the relativity of the predicate acts with facts, tricks, and motivations planting of adults through kids. And then when there's recollection of it, and it's used at other locations where they communicate in other words, they can't describe any location properly relative to criminal insidiousness, positive as its positive uses and or as its negative uses, because they were our collusion. So you guys are still involved with the torture, slavery, and extortion of our founders, multi-front simultaneous, in the app, because there were uses of that were also singularly used. And that's what American history is about. That's what each modern history is about, too. It's about that hyper-additional breaching method in the place of appreciation of the hyper-additional. But everyone forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded to pretend other, to use any and all means necessary, and motivations not pretended necessary. So increasingly, at each age of the conscious effect, and there's a Christina Sioka who has roles with a Dr. Gilmore, who's a male, and had a teacher that changed her names, Susan Gilmore. These are males and females on Central Connecticut State University. Also have roles with medical community. Hartford Hospital has roles also with intelligence community next to their location. Recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with predicate acts, with facts, with names on off the World Trade Center, and with the investigations of it since. So Mark Violet has roles with military, black and white themed, and interreligious spots with O'Brien family, and with their narrative, with everyone jumps in about who's using whose names and for what. Everyone's pretending people are making allegations to leave out the actual acts because they need to hide together the motivations actual. So they keep stacking names and rules. One thing they have commonly is uses of location /s. People are going to tell their parents things or not. In other words, and the value of that, because it's, in other words, they pretend they make honest value treatments or legitimate value treatments as lawyers originally instilled. We cannot leave them out with both sides of the cases. Their actual motivations are juxtaposed with other ones. They're needing to pretend they have more money motivations with a Trantolo and Trantolo. Roles with communications locations, spread, with the intelligence community, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. Roles with people that work with them, with a principal child abuser, planting evidence as fake motivations, criminally foreign influence, people uses of people's names, while tactically delusions raw, also relative to readings of statutes, criminally foreign influence that are involved here. In other words, the value of voting, they've been using, it's democracy we care about. Get down. Those people can't, but that's what I believe. How could you tell me I'm different? Fix the fake news. We shouldn't have to debate with people who want to force, trick, hurt, and persuade. Only loud natures of debate that can't afford the finite, which actually capable of being discerned, including how they make, how and why. Even when people defend themselves for treatments of their own syntactical treatments and uses of words like success. Oh, you're jealous. No, I have inside the cartoon, which is counter-obfuscated / hyper counter-obfuscated, because the hyper simultaneous is an identity, that comes with where and how. For example, not just how we have two eyes like other species' bodies. They are an identity that we can't be. but we are it one way. We are distinct, we are non-distinct, and we are simultaneous, but there is also a hyper-simultaneous here. Not just, and it's increasingly valuable to discern that, because it also has an identity of relationship to itself. It has the only increasing value of that, which are equally increasingly valued. And where there is function by that, per where and how it is functional, where and how there is hyper simultaneous. There is hyper invisible, but still discernible. That comes also with proper reception of each of the sciences. For example, the English language values the predicate as a distinct identity of relationship to itself that a verb can have, and as a distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneous value of that, which is also, everything is also slash hyper simultaneous. So everything that we see physical, when we describe it, that's physics juxtaposed with metaphysics. Juxtaposed. This is where the invisible but still discernible is functional relative to emotions descriptions. Emotions descriptions are criminally foreign influence descriptions of themselves since founding. The ancients revealed as nature does, as science that is actually honest does. Honest always. So people are dishonest, and they're showing how means need to get away with it. Yeah, people pretend they're good talkers. All they're doing is just talking a lot and fast. On both sides, fake shell game. Exceptions use tactical ulterior from how nature uses exception nature. Breaching method propagated. Sustained against Native Americans before our founders were even born. The design, tactically denatured ground locations, suburbs designed to cause negative value nature progressions, acts of natures, while increasingly the only means to cause positive value nature progressions, acts in natures imaginable by people were criminal insidiousness natures of positives in collusion with the negatives. Self-value rolls with it. Oh, but that's the law. In other words, nature shows a way to discern the law. So we have to appreciate how the knowledge of good and evil, and or how not in other words, the Old Testament, for example, the science is left out where and how it said right at the beginning of the Old Testament and the Quran. This is the only thing that is important, that matters. And they leave that out, and they pretend passions and emotions regarding defenses of those books, leaving and quoting the other parts of it, leaving out the value of what came first. Logic and nature like that can't afford to discern, for example, how programs work, programming, relative to the identity of value / value progression. That correlation nature is, while the rest of each self has what is generating each self as more of itself. In other words, that's what's generating space / existence. And this is how the ancients revealed this before sciences became criminally foreign influence in semi-ancient times. They became defenses of themselves as names of the human species body, increasingly not realizing they're being forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to value their names as the human species body's volume science. Science's names use tactical ulterior from how and why it demonstrates how we need to use our names, because it demonstrates identity being a volume that we share non-distinctly and distinctly while hyper simultaneously at the same time. And that further is positive or negative to itself. The ancients revealed the words, used tactical ulterior from how the semi-ancients and modern experts could afford to be discerned. And they were while being and having been used remotely, shown means and needs to hide this. Also relative to where and to how. Everyone is recorded, forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to speak through others, and or they are hurt when they are forced to speak alone. They are forced to entertain criminally foreign influence, fact, tribute, nature, quality, aspects, and natures as criminal insidiousness natures, for example, as wrongdoers, for example, as wrongdoing, for example, as wrongdoing itself, as the Racketeering, Influenced, and Corrupt Organization Act itself. See, a predicate act shows the invisible but still discernible. It shows a criminal insidiousness nature. But we were supposed to receive this as a hyper-criminal insidiousness. I mean, in other words, as hyper, invisible, but still discernible. In other words, we can't tell unless we use a nature of contemplation. That doesn't leave out the value of how, if the slightest detail is left out, that shows all kind of revelations. That and how we have black people's whites of eyes and exceptions and exception nature. How this has been left out from what slavery is about and was about. How this has gotten away with is also recorded. How motivated for that too, like pretending that the Civil War was about slavery. Using that truth, that where and how it was about slavery, slavery, using it for a lie. Our founders told us to explain how North and South had roles with slavery, and they were forced to fight against it, not just on paper, but in other words, as their roles pretending the Constitution was unabridged while it was still abridged, and self-valued roles with uses of that, while simultaneously that's being and having been used to keep the real causes of negative value nature, progressions, action natures, blamed on other things other than ourselves. She invested that also needed by the other identities as manifest. So the value of the worth, see that they have sanctions treatments with racketeering, influence, and corrupt organization, and with military statutes that are tactically criminally foreign influence / hyper criminally foreign influence, where and how this is relative. This method, where and how the hyper-evidential, we could use how the lawyers on both sides and all sides of criminal and civil cases, and victims advocates and their campuses' names had and have roles and interests ulterior from those realized and pretended. Also, while their tactically delusions wrought too, which is also relative. And that's observable where and how. What nature communicates with black people's whites of eyes. Exceptions. And denials of the significance of that. Second, a lawyer opens the mouth, you could discern how they're criminal insidious nature is positive and negative treatment. Had you come through campuses proper. See, the other things, others ourselves were put in the words, were communicated for our founders and are communicated for them. And they sense, discern, and hurt who doesn't have self-valued roles with criminally foreign influence. Uses, also singularly used, of predicate acts with facts, tricks, connected. Each year, in other words, I went to that, they even have a Christina Sioka next to a see, these are the Republicans and the Democrats have roles with intelligence communities, where and how that difference is being and having been used to measure and maintain themselves value uses of it with their syntactical defenses of themselves. Use criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. The president said that there was fake news involved. Their locations are involved with predicate acts delivery system method, with wire crime methods. WFSB has roles with people that had conversations with my fourth grade teacher behind my back, and with other teachers I had behind my back, who I loved. I love them. I don't know what. I don't even know them. I mean, I just they want you to speak bad things or pretend you're speaking bad things about campuses when you have to use their name. In other words, UConn has a whole bunch of people tied to a Mark Violet and to a Mike Violet. In other words, with predicate acts roles, with families there retired and in other words, retired and standing into branch. Exceptions tied to them, like military police, switching and forging names, preventing mandated law while pretending other, as collusions with all sides in cases, as rules with criminally foreign influence statutes. There's a YouTube channel, Judging Freedom. They have roles with criminally foreign influence readings of statutes at locations and at communications locations, with judges and prosecutors putting fake things in databases with them, and their roles with Russians and all these different countries and their difference, where it is a fake difference, where they have self-violent rules, suits, and ties, counters to it as collusions, cannot defend themselves and afford nature's answers by correlation nature, and the value of sequence truth. So they have remote uses of, there's a Ray Collusion name, whether it's him or not. Oh, you don't even know if that's him that typed that on there. He's already one of the ones involved with the wire crimes with the Wethersfield police and with falsified police reports through time, with judges and their extended family members planting evidences, foreign and domestic military, all kinds of medical families planting evidences, fake ties, fake to me completely, and with ones that made fake exceptions, sought me out for it too. And they can't afford to have discern what is actually recorded. It's how they get, it takes a long time to make combined arms training. Get it down. In other words, nothing personal against your sources. In other words, they have the real bad experts, and they have the experts that are showing that, like Mr. Ritter, regarding the BS, but they're both sides. They're collusion. They're a shell game, and with exception nature, use tactical terrier. These are people involved with the Judge Napolitano's Judging Freedom. So they have fake conversations with me, a whole bunch of people tied to Dillon family, Anna Dillon, Kevin Dillon, and Thomas Dillon, involved with a whole bunch of people in the Britain Superior Court involved with John Mayano. And with people, there's a girl at Trinity College. I don't know her name. She's one of the ones that they got to make fake exception of knowing me. And she hid. In other words, they have at the sides of Millwoods Park. And on it, when I was a kid, they make fake. In other words, they had people that with me next to them, so they could pretend I know them, or pretend we had communications when there wasn't. They pretend people don't remember things. Pretend people lie. People with there's a Kerr family and a Perone family, and they have roles with the buildings next to Fox Connecticut News and next to WFSB, as roles with names on off WTNH and spots next to it. Also with the intelligence community, foreign and domestic, criminally foreign influence, we're in how they have roles with black themed, KKK themed, and Asian themed, for example. And roles also with that, with names with shipping locations like the post office and locations next to it, like UPS and locations next to it, and next to that, like Buckley High School, and a Joe Aiello involved with mayors, involved with that park there too. involved with and with people involved with Griswold Street, involved with criminally foreign influence uses of investigators, and as roles with all sides, collusions with all sides in criminal and civil cases. A whole bunch of people tied to John Maiano and Weathersfield Pizza recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, planting evidences with judges and prosecutors and foreign bodies and their family members, and with people associated with. So there's a Robert Reed too, and there's a Mike Roberts, who have roles with a shopping center and other places associated with them that are conjunct, and their roles with conjunctions to names on off Route 3 and conjunctions to that and to that, like the state judicial branch offices, increasingly involved with them intercities, planting evidences, and with child abusers and other natures of federal criminals before they were caught. And as people involved with Sandy Hook, involved with crimes with their patients and criminals before they got caught, and with the names next to the body dumping spots, and next to the names involved increasingly, per where and how there are collusions with predicate acts with facts. Also, a DeSimone family is one of the ones involved with Hartford Hospital families. A whole bunch of Hartford Hospital families have been planting evidences on and off campuses connected with foreign and domestic families. What Weathersfield police have recorded, like people with the name Bayer, are in other words, a lawyer associated with a police chief, Cintron, is involved with federal crimes with other countries and with judges and prosecutors. So when they speak to you about Racketeering, Influence, and Corrupt Organization Act or any act, they're leaving out how they prevent acts from being properly treated, real life acts. They're preventing proper discernment of the value of a predicate, which is, we're discerning the value of nature's identity of relationship to itself and the only increasing value of that. And the subject. Now, slavery is a whole bunch of subjects. But if you make it a subject and you leave out the smallest finite detail, let alone the significance of it. I say and or because this is differentially too, because there are other motivations in names, including groups like criminal enterprises, but also like the people behind the Racketeering, Influence, and Corrupt Organization Act, the people involved with readings of statutes, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought since founding, pretending passions and emotions other. They have roles with collusions between each of the campuses of each age of fact-keeping nature and uses of that. So these are, in other words, they have people standing in the Hartford Hospital to demonstrate non-verbally their collusions with abuses of my family and with Hartford Hospital before the World Trade Center attack in that context and sense. And this is after the World Trade Center attack. Before the World Trade Center attack, I didn't know the names involved. And I still don't know the names of the judges and the police forms, but we can get them. It might be an Officer Hunter as one of the ones on off where the Harriet Beecher Stowe house, Mark Twain house is. Also involved with a whole bunch of people tied to John Maiano, involved with predicate acts on off Central Connecticut State University, as roles with names on off Trinity College, involved with wire crimes and confessions and uses of confessions, where and how they pretend the right to lie. When they're interpreting why we mention that, they're leaving out how that's not what I'm speaking. They're using the right to lie where they don't have the right to lie. And their roles with fabricating audio and video transcripts into databases with medical offenders of kids and with names placed at elderly locations. And VA, clear as day, you can't see the VA was designed as what is unacceptable, as those people extorted in New York City, for example, while they are tortured. And you guys want to debate the nature of debate. You want to pretend If I say they're enslaved, you guys can't defend that and afford discernment of how properly to discern. So a predicate act is showing an identity of relationship to itself that every subject has, every verb has, and it's showing the application of it tied to the identity of relativity / hyper-relativity that remains greater than and more finite than, distinctly but also non-distinctly and hyper-simultaneously, so we could discern it, but also further positive or negative to itself, where relevant Earth's special differences, and the fact of the existence of a special difference, how it is hyper-additional with the definition of special. See, the how and why is tactical ulterior then can be afforded discerned by our formal fact-sheeping natures. Also because of the placements as collusions, like with the sense and sensibilities of people where they work. If they have clients, if they're in service industry, it's even worse. Differentially too, they exploit difference. Because when you're getting over on the simultaneous, you need to lie about hot and or about cold and or about warm. And keep the subject there. Keep the finite left out. Keep what's actually simultaneously recorded. Everything, I don't want to use the word extreme. They have that used with delusions. That they put extremism to measure and maintain collusions with the World Trade Center attack, effective use /s recorded. WFSB attached me to fake conversations about with World Trade Center with them and attack with them and with others. And they're planting fake motivations for it. Where they have exceptions, apparent, their actual motivations that's recorded that used to screen foreign bodies involved with them and their location and the location next to all locations per the method with facts. So sick and fake and pretending other. Please follow mandated law for the they have wire crime action methods with the campuses where they have medical families spying on the kids and then using truths as lies and fitting collusions with it, making the kids self-value roles because relative to where and how fake or integrity is employed, both projected and hyper projected with communications, again, greater than and more finite than, and active in grouped ways other than these descriptions of it, tactical ulterior. You guys came through sick campuses, sickly distinctly, so it could measure too. Quality nature of debate regarding that, leaving out the proofs of it, forced, leaving out and making up finite details, group ones. Please follow mandated law and get them onto paper too, because they have roles with CNN sources and people, and with involved with their internet site, their social media, involved with social media and readings of statutes, criminally foreign influence, but that are simultaneously relative to the wire crime action methods and their motivations narratives, leaving that out. Those aren't separate. They have criminally foreign influence readings of statutes. We want to have debates about what's typed on social media. Who knows what? I already know the Ray Collusion and a whole bunch of people like with Wethersfield Pizza since I was a kid are involved with identity theft, frauds, and foreign and domestic with them, attaching me and others to fake locations, fake ties to people on my campuses I never even saw on a campus. In other words, they're putting and they're having conversations with their teachers behind my back. Part of the methods, as the people involved with them, leading up to in the context of the World Trade Center attack, and then since, as the roles with WFSB, involved with child offenders, further with the principal being with wire crime action methods with their phones with them too. They have their roles under the guise of success and job value with the meteorologists, in other words, and juxtaposed with their roles with intelligence as police forms are not. They're criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought. Respond for them. Fix the wire crime acts and methods and get them onto paper, please. They have more positions with the campuses that have been roles with predicate acts in the past. They need to get them down. They everyone attached to fake words too. So that's why we need to get them on paper and have peace. For we means to counter. They're trying to start fights between everyone, and they'll have things ignored, and then have well, let's go and go back and forth in cases relative to and as roles with this. So fear God for what's on off the sides of Central Connecticut State University, as names recorded increasingly involved with predicate acts with names near me. Fear God. Make sure they get on paper. Now you have threats with these are people with their patients and criminals, including fire department families, that have to run and hide live aggressions because uses of themselves remotely, speaking those illusions relative to each age of fact-keeping nature. They're putting more predicate acts with facts in the campuses and other database relationships at the same time. And the difference of that is also consciously used, including how they have all sides in criminal and civil cases, victims and their advocates as collusions with identity theft, frauds, slanders, instances, pretending other with motivations, and where they have true motivations. You fear. You follow mandated law for these people and for the social media stewards. We'll examine the wire crimes that you have to use simultaneously to examine how they've been criminally foreign influence readings of statutes and uses of whether how it's not clear if that was actually one of the Ray Collols. They're involved anyway with Weathersfield Police wire crimes. And on Facebook, they have Officer Jerry Miller recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, planting evidences on all sides of my house rolls per the names he brought up, like Kerr, who's one of the ones involved with the Dillon family, with all sides of my house planting the evidences, and with people from Hartford Hospital, former the domestic military, further involved with World Trade Center attack rolls. All kinds of corruption and delusions with the people with psychology, with UConn. However, that part of their campus has to be purged, but it's all the campuses. These are police forms that have used their badges and their roles with that, supposed to be experts against the other police forms, where and how they have the hierarchy and the lower hierarchy as collusions with themselves. Criminally foreign influence with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. Criminally foreign influence uses of pretended legitimate roles with Los Solitos on off Trinity College and UConn, with the violets, with their neighbors involved with child sex offenders, further involved with a Joshua Julian, with KKK, Confederate flag themed, the black themed. So don't be punks and don't describe me leaving out what came first. Please follow mandated law. For Judge Napolitano too, please, I ask you, and we I have to beg for you to get the interbranch on one name and sequence. Whole bunch of people tied to this Elm Street and Rocky Hill and Weathersfield, planting evidence with judges too, intercities before the World Trade Center attack at locations. They should fear God now and get down. Say sorry to the American people with WFSB, WTNH, and Fox Connecticut News. Get them on paper too, because they have roles with it. And these are people involved with bug spray, things like that. Watch out, because they have guns and things like that, and they have sick people with the they have some sick intercultural stuff. Each one of the little represent and their sexual differences, because they have the interbranch little fakes pretending passions and emotions against the pretending to perceive prejudice, so they can leave out what's actually recorded. They have these little differences employed as predators. So when it's responded to, such can be pretended. We're not going to keep things blamed that are supposed to be blamed on the breaching method on other things, others ourselves, because that screen's worse too, and its function. And in other words, so Americans, please, YouTubers, get Fox News, MSNBC, and their sources. In other words, including their interbranch retired and standing, and the value of that uses, including in other words, what that means, the exceptions tied to them. I'm going to show you. It means other than they could afford discern. Now, one has learned boxings. Get them in other words. I went to that hospital. I had no conversation. They had people standing there they use all these little fake tricks. So if you describe that, it makes it look like you had a conversation with them. These are people involved with the parks and recreation through time, who have roles with crimes with drugs and medicines crimes, while tactically delusions with their patients and criminals against others who are attaching people to fake conversations. Lombardo families, people with the name, even people with the name Napolitano, next to the state, next to the Connecticut, I'm next to the community center in Weathersfield, all sides of the community center, people involved with suburb Bajario, men and women with the intelligence community on off Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, have roles with child abuses, intercities on and off campuses, filming fake things, mixed with real things faked, where they have roles with recorded consciously, criminally foreign influence evidences planting into databases, identity theft, fraud, slanders, instances, roles with investigators putting fake transcripts in databases, fake ties, fake natures of ties to people into databases, and with the news at the same time, so people can't get a response. The reason we have such a high conviction rate is per their roles with these other natures of organized crime. They're interbranch differentially and or the exceptions tied to them, and they're blaming each other and or even when correct, they're blaming it wrong as collusions. Why they have collusions and their actual motivations, they're dishonest about it. They value that having been for everyone else, otherwise that person is sensed and hurt, and or that group. When black people, or when any human says there's prejudice, if they're saying it honestly, then we're supposed to reinterpret it. Because there is all kinds of ways that people say prejudice just to hide how they were getting over. They're using functionally how they just say with whatever, do whatever to keep the finite details made up or left out and not discerned increasingly. But how that is motivated, you have to understand first. That's why we have to understand their uses of the sides of Millward's Park. And the girl that came, she went like that with her, like she was going to kiss me. And she's increasingly involved with identity theft, fraud, slander, fake motivations planting, because she hid what I was recorded right there, which are predicate acts roles. I don't know her name. They have this obfuscate, but she's one of the ones with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin. Overt criminal enterprises, plural, on off Trinity College, who confessed and recorded we can't. They have roles with Ray Collusion, two people with the name Ray Collusion. Also, Bob Chase is one of the ones who Middletown locations with state police forms and families, and other involved with other police forms, intercities through time, involved with drugs and medicines, crimes with kids, with foreign and domestic military too, and pretending to be against that. As roles within as names on off the state corrections offices and on off the state judicial branch offices needing to hide live progressions while used remotely. They have roles with criminally foreign influence uses of relative murders and body dumping spots and timed uses of it, intercities. In other words, a whole bunch of people tied to John Scully. And involved with narratives regarding the body dumping spot of Billy Grasso and the person of Billy Grasso and someone that reported, there are a bunch of murders tied to that, but they have roles with the names on my street associated with John Scully and another one with Johnny Callis. Johnny Callis has roles with Delaferro family members. They're involved with sexual circles with probate court judges and their families, and they are involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, making completely fake instances, and then making fake exceptions where they have other people film and they have people repeat truths used for lies. They make fake exceptions of knowing on each other. And Antonetta Spada recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed she'd been influenced to roles with predicate acts I found out it was with judges and their family, but with people on my street who also brought her name up and pretended I said that I had sexual relations with them, which is disgusting because they have sexual circles together. And the people involved with the campuses, the names next to campuses and timed uses of it with identity theft, fraud, slanders. And like there's a schedule family who's one of her boyfriends. Also, another one is a Chris White involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders against me as one of the people involved, reportedly Chris White, as one of the people on all Fox Connecticut News involved with predicate acts with them, with police forms, and with a whole bunch of judges tied to Two Rod Highway, planting evidences, foreign and domestic military, and people with tied to databases like campuses. Trinity College has probate judges and has Hartford Court's judges, family members, planting evidences with foreign and domestic military and medical. A Leahy family had fake conversations with me. All this is all faked information. Also, they have one of the kids that used to work at the community center and with the Parks and Recreation, who knows my name. I don't even know his name. And he's involved with the John Riano and people with I never saw John Riano around that park either. I never saw Ray Claw around that park either, Millwoods Park. And they made that fake exception on the side of it. And I don't know their names, but they're increasingly people from Trinity College involved with planting evidences with a Ray Claw, involved with drugs and involved with the Eastern States Narcotic Drug Task Force. And some military police from Germany and from Korea and from Italy, involved with medical families that are involved with identity thefts and frauds, where and how it is recorded consciously, having been used, their actual motivations for pretending passions and emotions while using KKK, Confederate flag theme and black theme communications with me there actually were. And how they need to hide that because of economic things. They're leaving out how it actually was and pretending that's they're leveraging as their criminally foreign influence, pretending they were legitimately doing what they're not supposed to do, or they get punished with sanctions by other countries demonstrably. Not even a lawyer. The lawyers, they're fakes and founding with all sides in the cases, and they're victims and the victims' advocates appointed by the courts and the news at the same time. That's not complicated. That's just extensive. Criminally foreign influence. So we're going to value. We're going to discern how a predicate act can be used to discern invisible but still discernible criminal insidiousness nature. But we have to discern the difference between hyper-criminal insidiousness nature relative to this breaching method that employ in the names individually grouped and together, incapable of defending their logic and of affording how nature communicates to be discerned. Now, one has learned. If you want to debate about emotions, you do it on paper because you're leaving out the value of what came first, too. So the collusions to hide what came first with everything. Because they have predicate acts with facts at the youngest ages. There's method by that. Fake motivations. So tons of people with Hartford, Connecticut, Hartford Hospital, and other New Britain campuses, medical campuses, their security, their nurses, and the mental health people are involved with all kinds of natures of organized crime and methods, predicate acts, and of criminal insidiousness itself, delivery. That's how they're hurting these kids the most too, with the criminal insidiousness, positive and negative treatments, and use/s of that. So make sure you get on paper. Don't make me beg anymore. Please, Judge Napolitano, file mandated law for the judges and prosecutors involved with uses of social media, readings of statutes, criminally foreign influence. Also with the lawyers of Robert Cheverry, as Robert Cheverry and the woman associated and the men and women associated with the lawyers of the police chiefs involved like Cintron and his family, a Mazzucato family, has roles with planting evidences along Route 175 and with campuses and names next to the campuses involved with medical abuses of kids involved in way worse. So make sure they get on paper. It's also rules with people with modern pastry associated with the name Maiano, involved with child offenders, medical, and military at the same time. How they're hiding that with their delusions too. We're going to address this, and the uses of the religious locations, fake integrity, pretended other, how they get away with it. We're going to address this.